Hi and welcome to Steve Wraith's True Crime Podcast, and I'm joined today by James Alite. How are you, James?
Good. How are you, Steve? Good to be here.
Yeah, great to have you on, mate. Thanks very much for giving up the time. And regular viewers will know that we like to get different guests on every now and then, predominantly a Newcastle United page, this, where we talk a lot about football, and over 43,000 subscribers now on here. All very delighted about Newcastle getting a takeover from the Saudis. But I'll leave that to the other programs, where today we're going to focus on James's upbringing. We might get to sport, who knows? We sometimes do. But I just want to introduce it to the audience, really, and give us a little bit of your early days. Where were you brought up, James?
I brought up in Queens, New York. It was a tough, low working class neighborhood, blue collar, and very eclectic. I would say mostly Irish, Italian, German, like that. But it was very eclectic. I went to schools with just about every race and ethnicity because we went to public schools. During that time, there was a lot of busing, and so there was a lot of kids, and it was a tough area, very tough area. I grew up very.
Was it a big family that you came from?
Yeah, actually, what we had was my grandfather came over from Albania, and he bought a house in Queens, in New York, and he had a diner that he had. So we had a 3-family house. And in that house, we had my uncles, aunts, great aunts, grandmother, my family. There was 6 in my family: my mom, my dad, my brother, and my 2 sisters. So we had a really big family. And it was fun. It was fun having a lot of people. It was both stressful and fun at the same time because we had a lot of people to interact with.
Were you one of the oldest? Were you the youngest?
I was in the middle. I was right in
You
the
were in.
middle.
Did you
Yeah.
find that? Did you find that hard? I mean, I grew up with one brother. I was the oldest brother by 7 years, so I didn't have a big family, and even our outgrown family wasn't that big. But did you find that you had to compete quite a bit, or was the
Well,
equal love and devotion, given to everybody in the family?
no, I think everyone always had their favorites and stuff like that. So we think it was, we had uncles that we had favorites with. They had favorites. My mom and dad had favorites. Everyone had favorites, and it was mostly the boys and the girls. So we were separated, very male dominated, I would say. The way I grew up, very macho, a lot of sports, boxing. Um, as far as me myself, you know, we all have different problems as kids growing up. I had my issues with my family and with the neighborhood, and but I grew up in a climate that was very tough, and kind of had to suck it up, and you did what you had to do to survive. So
Tell us a little bit
doctors.
about Tell us a little bit about those early days at school, and what were they like? Were you a scholar? Were you somebody who was
No,
interested in education?
no, not at all. I think I was ADD. I was ADHD. So I was real hyperactive. Very hard for me to concentrate and focus. Um, and I think I was very emotionally intelligent, and I was probably intelligent, but in terms of school, I wasn't a good student. Um, I was well liked. I was an athlete, and that got me through a lot of things, being an athlete. Um, but even though I was small, I was an athlete. So I had my challenges. I mean, it was a lot of fighting. I had a lot of street fights as a kid, because I grew up in a very tough area, and I was kind of shy. I was shy until I got to a certain age, and I was very shy as a kid. So when you're constantly going into large environments with a lot of new kids, like the school systems were packed with kids from all over the cities and stuff, you constantly have to prove yourself. And I grew up in an environment where you had to prove yourself. So if someone stepped up to you, you couldn't step back. I don't care how many, what size. That was the mentality we had. So there was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of, going back, there was a lot of traumas, a lot of PTSD, a lot of gang fights at very young ages, But that was, I didn't know any different. So it was tough. But at the same time, there was something charming about the neighborhood because we walked to the stores, we walked to every place because the neighborhood was very close knit. So everything was in walking distance. You didn't even need a car, which was kind of nice. You don't have to see that anymore with the suburbs.
Tell us a little bit about your parents. I mean, you mentioned uncles and aunties there from Albania. Was there was it an Albanian family, or was there another side to the family?
No, it was Albanian. It was actually Albanian. We have some Greek in us, but it was mostly both sides were Albanian. I think we grew up. I mean, it seems to me we grew up very close, but very aggressive, very loud family. Not unintelligent, but very loud, aggressive, I would say. Maybe loud's not the right word, aggressive. But my mother's side, my grandfather was a gangster. He had a gambling operation. And on my father's side, there were gangsters. So there were gangsters on both ends of the spectrum. My mother's were in the Albanian Mafia, and my father was around the Italians. So he grew up in Lower East Side with the Italian Mafia and my uncles. So and my father was like an associate, you would say, in that family, and my uncle was involved with a relative. I forgot what he was exactly. If he was a nephew of Luciano, of Lucky Luciano, and so I got to meet a lot of these guys when I was a kid, very young kid growing up. All my uncles and people that I knew were all on the Italian side, and then on the other side they were all Albanian gangsters. So I grew up with a lot of different gangsters on both ends of the family.
I mean, at a young age, obviously, you're growing up in this area, you're having to fight, you've got gang fights, etc. Is that
Right.
something really that toughens you up, and you can go one way or another, can't you? You either take up that lifestyle, or I guess you end up being bullied. So I mean, you obviously grasped that. You obviously grasped that lifestyle quite quickly.
I mean, the way I grew up is we were boxing very young. We were boxing at like 3 years old with my father, and my father boxed in the Navy. And my father grew up in a very tough area, and I think my father was very, a little bit, I don't want to say a paranoid or aggressive, but he always warned us against bullies and being able to stand up for ourselves and to be tough and to fight back and to be a winner in sports. And we grew up with that mentality. So when you grow up in a neighborhood that's really tough and there's a lot of bad guys and there's a lot of, tough areas and stuff like that, and your father gives you the mentality that you have to fight all the time. You can't back away. You can't walk away. You can't back down from anything. Then you're primed. You're primed to fight, and there's no stepping back. There was no stepping back really because it would kill us. It would kill me to step back or not fight or not win, or it was a very kind of hypnotic kind of state I was in, where if someone did something, you didn't even think. You just kind of reacted the way you had to react. And it was tough. I'm not going to say it wasn't tough. I was never a bully. I never started fights, but I always finished them.
I guess most English people's, thoughts about gangland and gangsters and people in America probably would look at something like Goodfellas. Is it like that, where you saw Henry Hill starting off as a boy, seeing people around him, gangsters around him, wanting to be like them because they had money and cars and women, and then ultimately decide, I'm gonna do that. So then they start working for the mob. They do little errands, they do things, and they move up the ladder. Was it like that for you?
Not really. It wasn't like that typical Goodfellas. Like, if you saw Goodfellas, you saw the way he grew up, the kid Henry Hill. We were around it, but we were also around sports. I was around, and I was very, very good at sports. I played at a very high level. I was a boxer. I know you boxed. I was a boxer. They wanted to turn me pro when I went to one of the gyms. When I just started off as an amateur, they were talking about me turning pro. So, I had a lot of natural ability in sports. Even though I was small in size, I was very strong. I had, I guess you could say, not just natural abilities. So, I grew up with sports. I grew up with, a lot of eclectic things. I like the good guys. I sometimes you like the cops. Sometimes you like the bad guys, depending on the show. I mean, we love sports. We loved. So I don't think I was ever a bad kid. I liked mischief. I liked the danger. There were parts of me that liked danger and liked mischief. But at the same time, there was another part of me that was, very kind and caring and very loving, and never wanted to take advantage of anybody or hurt anybody unless it was in the context of them doing something to me first. So, yeah, I kind of grew up with it. No, I didn't think that I was going to be it. My whole idea was I was going to be an athlete, and I was going to be whether it be a professional boxer or a football player or a baseball player. This is the way I was raised to be an athlete. Um, but the gangster stuff or the tough guy stuff was there, but not so much as a gangster. Even though I saw it right in front of me, it wasn't that I thought that they had, and I never thought of the women, the money like that. I just thought that never really occurred to me. I just figured I'd get that all on my own, whatever way.
Why did the
So I didn't.
why did the road of being a professional boxer not work out? Why did you not become one?
Uh, yeah, I think that football was probably my best sport. Boxing and football were probably my two best, although I played everything at a high level. I think what happened with me is I had a very severe neuroimmune disease and autoimmune diseases at a very young age. I didn't know back then, but I know now. And I was fighting through it the whole time. So my oxygen level and my exhaustion from these diseases were incredible. Now, looking back at it, I'm wondering how the hell I was able to play at the level I played. Now, I used to go boxing, and guys used to brag about me when I was boxing. Other boxers used to come up to me that were older than me because I started at the gym when I was 14, and I went by myself. I took 2 buses and walked, and I would go through days where I'd be exhausted and fatigued and weak, and then I'd have other days where I had my energy, but this was like an amazing difference between one day and the next, where I had nothing in the tank. And it wasn't like a second or third wind kind of thing. We all know how to get our second wind or break through the barriers as an athlete. But this wasn't that. This was something diseased. And so eventually, when I got to a certain age, I just lost my oxygen capacity completely. And I could not, and I faked it. I faked it because I didn't want anyone to know I was sick. But I faked it. And back then, they didn't have the diagnostic skills to figure out what was going on with me. So, I thought it was my heart. I says, I can't breathe. I can't, exercise. I can't box. So this is what really kind of started separating me from these being, because I could have played, very high level at everything. you know, you never want to say pro, because pro is like it's like an incredible level to be a professional football player, or professional, even a professional boxer. It's another level. But I think I could have done, you know, I would have won, I'm sure, the Golden Gloves. I'm sure I would have won, you know, the amateur levels at a very high level in boxing and football also. I probably would have played college ball and did very well at a good college in football. So yeah, I had that skill set, but the diseases were killing me,
Yeah,
and
it's
they got worse. Yeah, yeah, and the thing is, you know, Steve, back then when you want to be macho, and I don't know, I don't like to use the word macho, but just tough. You know, you try to, you know, maintain a certain amount of. My ego was all based on my toughness and my ability in sports, and you don't want anyone to know. You even hide it from yourself. So when you're feeling sick like that, you don't want anyone to know you're sick. So yeah, it was rough. It was rough in retrospect, looking at it.
how did you get
Especially,
into crime then? I mean, what made you commit crime? Can you remember your first crime?
yeah, I think what got me into crime was my brother is Johnny. He was already involved. I was sick. I was sort of like anorexic at the time, and 2 years into anorexia, I actually I had one of the guys from Goodfellas come over and see me. Couldn't believe I was emaciated, Steve. I was really like down to, I think it was 101, 102 pounds. And to give you an example, I'm like 170 now, and I'm mostly, you know, solid muscle. So I was 102 pounds. That's incredibly low weight
It is,
uh,
yeah.
for, for that. And the doctor was shocked when I went to the doctors that I wasn't either dead or didn't have major organ damage. And a guy named Billy Estrema, who was with Goodfellas, came over to see me. He was with the gang. He was with the crew from Goodfellas. He's with Jimmy Burke and all those guys. Who the main character was Robert De Niro, was Jimmy Burke. And Billy came over, saw me, felt bad for me. He says, "I want to take you to dinner." We went to a Wise Guy restaurant in Queens on Metropolitan Avenue, and I went to dinner, started eating heavy, and I hadn't really eaten a good meal in 2 years. I hadn't eaten, so we started gaining my weight back, and my brother was involved with Gotti at the time. Billy was with a different crew. He was with, like I said, Paulie Vario's crew, and my brother's with John Gotti. And you know, I wanted to get involved with him. You know, I saw that. That's when I started seeing things that I liked, and I figured this was my next step. This is where my next step was going to be, from anorexia to going into the mafia. So that was my next step. And Billy actually got killed. I want to say about Billy was a real strong guy. I met him when I was boxing. He was a real tough boxer too. He was down at the same gym that I went to. Billy was a light heavyweight, and I also played all-star football and all-star baseball with Billy. And Billy was killed, I want to say, 5 months after he took me to dinner. And you know, the word I heard, he was set up and he was shot up bad, and he was found in a dumpster. They found him in a dumpster. So that was like a wake up call to me. But at that time, I already had my mind straight that I was going to be involved in the, you know, in this crime thing. So I was no looking back, even when Billy got shot up.
I mean, you grew up in the same neighborhood, obviously, as you know, as the Gottis, and I mean, the Gottis, if I remember rightly, were part of the Gambino family,
Right.
and very well known. I mean, as a youngster in Newcastle in England, I remember following the news, and we were only getting a little bit of news from America back in those days, but we were getting a little bit of news about Gotti and about him being arrested, and the Teflon Don was the nickname that he was given, and it was interesting to see. And you know, as time progressed, you know, he became quite notorious on this side of the Atlantic. So what's what was your first memories of John Gotti?
Senior, the father?
The father, yeah.
Yeah, so I met him. My interactions with him were few. There weren't a lot of interactions. I interacted with him during the holidays. I was invited over to the house at some private parties. Um, and mostly, he thought of me and us guys as kids. We were younger than him, so we were kids to him. And most of my interaction was listening to him talk, telling stories. Um, he reminded me a lot of my own family, to be honest with you. In a lot of ways, he reminded me of my uncles and my own kind of family, the way they acted, the way he talked. You know, he was like a charming guy. He was a man's man, and you know, you could see the potential violence in him, but you could also see the other side of him that was more controlled and tapered with the family and with other people, and how he was charming when he had to be. Now, when I met him in the streets, when I was down by the clubs and stuff, it would be like he wouldn't really acknowledge me. It would be more like quick hello. If I said hello to him, he'd say hello real quick, but he wouldn't acknowledge us. And you got to understand, they don't give much respect to kids. They look at it as kids. They know who we are, but they don't. They keep their distance. It's like they want to stay above you, and I understand that. And so there's that little distant thing. Like, he's not on my level. He's a kid. I'll say hello to him at most, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And my interactions are mostly with Junior, John's son.
So getting back to your personal journey, you've made this decision now to get involved in crime and with the mafia. What was it?
Right.
What's the first step? How do you do it? I think in the movies we see that that there's almost like an initiation. But I mean, I presume some of this is movies and others isn't. What how did you initiate yourself into the mafia?
So I was an associate. I wasn't a mafia member. I couldn't be a member even if I was involved, and I wasn't involved to that degree. What I did, Steve, was I bounced around. I found that the mafia had so many rules and regulations, or just being with John Jr. had so many rules and regulations with it. What you can do, what you can't do, who you could talk to, who you can't talk to. It was very restricting. Um, who you got into a fight with, who you could fight with, who don't make trouble, like that. So you kind of like you were handcuffed, and also how you made money. You couldn't sell drugs, you couldn't do certain things. So I hung out with the Irish gang for quite a bit, and I was making money with them. And we were running a big pot park, marijuana park, in the 80s, in the early 80s, and we were doing real well. We were making, like, I would say, like 4,000 a night, which was a lot of money back then for basically selling dime bags. We had such a following that people would come up for dime bags, and we would sell out about $4,000 a night. Like I said, back in the 80s. So there was really good money in that. And, obviously it was a lot of guys that would try to rob you. And there's a lot of situations that were very dangerous up there with the cops and with people that try to take you off and rob you. So I did a lot of that. I did some sports booking. I did some collecting at clubs. Nothing on the real, like, I didn't do anything. I didn't hurt anybody, unless there was a situation that someone caused me to get into a fight. And even then, I didn't really do things that were too aggressive. I did basically what I had to do, nothing more than that. Except one time I ran a couple of guys over with my car, and that was basically an instinctive thing. They were very close to me when I ran them over, so nothing really happened to them. They just got scared and they went over the top of the car, but they were okay. But mostly I was fighting battles that were brought to me. People robbed me with gunpoint, and people did a lot of things like that. They didn't know who I was, so I went through a lot of those things that you would go through with drugs. You can't announce who you are when the people come up to you. You just go with the flow, and you don't know who's a cop and who's going to come and take you off. So it was kind of like that kind of situation.
I remember listening to a podcast that you did a while back, and did you have a run-in in Jamaica? Was it Jamaica Road?
I had a lot of run-ins. Jamaica, I had a run-in in the park. You talk about the time where I was held up by gunpoint.
Yeah. Tell us about that.
So I was in the park. I was dealing actually myself that night, and it was a 12-hour day and night. So I start off early and then I go into the night. Now, you got to remember now, it's probably November, and so it's getting cold. It's getting dark early. 5, 6 o'clock, it's dark. Now I'm there till about 11 o'clock at night, and where I was up in the woods in the park. So I had a place in the woods, and it's pitch black over there. There's no lights. There's no nothing. There's lights ahead of me. So when people are walking up to get the weed, there's street lamps in the park. But where I'm situated, it's pitch black, and you're all alone, and you can't carry a gun because of cops. You can't carry anything, and you don't know who the good guy and the bad guy is till the last second. So you really can't even carry a bat. It's not even worth having a bat by you. So it was one of those rough nights where I had a lot of guys that came up. 2 guys tried to rob me. One guy said he had to take a piss. I heard him pee. I heard him in the woods, and there was leaves on the floor. And I didn't hear the leaves making any noise when he was apparently peeing. So I knew he was going to take me off. So I went up to him and I threatened. There was a lot of situations that night. The cops came up earlier in the night. They tried to catch me. I took off. They couldn't catch me. And it was one of those nights. Then at the end of the night, actually, excuse me, before the end of the night, my girlfriend comes up. And she comes up about 6 o'clock, I want to say, at night. And I think she came up because she knew that a lot of girls were fooling around with me, and they were hanging out earlier in the night to hang out with me and just to fool around or whatever. And so she was jealous. So she came up and she was talking to me, and I told her, get out of here. You're gonna get me killed, and you're gonna get killed. It's dangerous up here. So I was telling her to get away, and the guy had walked up as I was yelling at her and said to me, how you doing? I go, yeah, what's up? And what can I get? What do you need? And he goes, well, what do you got? So I looked at him and I smiled, and I go, I got pot. What do you need? He goes, oh, I'll come back. I said, you see that guy? That guy's going to come back and rob me. I said, and she goes, I said, so now she left. I yelled at her. She left. And about 11 o'clock at night, the cops had come up with a big sting. They do a sting every 4 months, the detectives and the cops, undercover cops. So it was about 9 o'clock at night. It was pitch black. I'm by myself. All of a sudden, I see from the top of me, I see a flashing light, flashlight, and I hear freeze, motherfucker. And a bunch of cops are coming, roaring down the stairs. And then in front of me, I see a whole bunch of cop cars, marked and unmarked, coming up the park in their trucks and their cars. And they got me cornered. And they're coming from every angle. So I just take off in the woods. Somehow I get away. And they're parked in the park now for about 2 hours, looking for my stash and looking for me. And they're looking all over. They can't find it. And I'm sitting watching this whole thing take place now. I'm out of the harm's way with the cops. I'm with a bunch of other people. I'm on the streets. I'm looking up at it like I don't have nothing to do with it. Cops have no idea who I am, who did what. They have no idea what I look like. So what happens is they finally leave, and there's about 30 people standing on the corner, and I'm not exaggerating, waiting to get their weed. They're waiting for the cops to leave so we can get their weed, right? So, you know, when you get that feeling and you know something's wrong and you should just call it a night. Well, that night I said to myself, that's it. It's the end of the night. I got 30 people waiting. Fuck them. I'm not doing it. And my partner goes, oh, come on, Jimmy, you can make so much money. So under my better judgment, I says, all right, let me do this fucking thing. I had bad feeling, really bad feeling. So I went back up to the park when the cops were gone. They were all gone now. They separated. All the detectives left, and they were gone for the night. It's about 12 o'clock at night, and there's about 25 people. And as I go into the woods to get my stash, I noticed there's two guys separated from everybody else. And usually, Steve, when this happens, you get you kind of get a sixth sense when you know someone's going to rob you. Even from a distance, you just get a feeling that you're walking into a setup. You're going to get robbed. And a lot of times I would just walk right up to people because I was trying to prove myself to myself, maybe, who knows. And at this point, I knew these two guys were going to rob me. I didn't know it was the guy that had come earlier that asked me what I had. I didn't recognize, too dark to recognize who the two guys were. But it was him. And he was with another guy and possibly a third guy driving. And as soon as I came out, I knew I was going to get robbed. As soon as I came out, they hit me over the head with a gun. And looked like the biggest gun I've ever seen in my life. And they were ripping out. I guess they thought that I would be a problem, because mostly when guys rob somebody, they usually come right up and they just put the gun to you and they say, listen, give me your shit or you're going to get killed. And you give them the shit and you move and you live and look for them another day. In this case, they jumped me. They hit me over the head with a gun. They put a dagger. One guy had a knife, a long dagger knife, to my throat, and the other guy had a gun in my head. And they were ripping my pockets, ripping my shirt, my pants, taking my money, taking the weed off of me, because I had all the weed in my pockets and in a baggie. And they didn't really give me a chance. And I looked up at him a couple times, and the first time I was trying to see his face, the second time I tried to see his face again, and he says, motherfucker, you look at me one more time, I'll blow your fucking brains out. So then they got done doing that. Then they dragged me from my neck, from my collar. They were taking me up the stairs, and I was trying to wait down. I didn't want to fight them, but I didn't want them to take me up. So I was trying to weight myself down so that they couldn't take me that easily. And the last second they decided, they said, fuck them, let them go. Because they didn't know what they were going to do with me till the last second. And they made that decision at the last second to let me go. So I don't know if they were going to kill me or what they were going to do, but it felt like they were going to kill me. But at the last second, they let me go. So, you know, that was, you know, in one sense, I felt, okay.
Did you ever get revenge on these people? Did you ever find out who this was and take revenge?
Yeah. I got the main guy.
Right. I was going to say, can you talk about that, or is that something you can't say?
Was
it a bit of street justice?
Yeah, street justice. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting. Fascinating stuff. You know, for me, obviously, I was lucky enough to bring Henry Hill to the UK and interview Henry just before he died, 3 months before he died. And I think what I found interesting about Henry was that when he was here, the first question I asked him on stage, when we only had 100 people watching, we all watched the film with Henry. And as the film finished, we got him on stage and we had an hour with him. And he stayed in a friend of mine's house in England for 7 days with his partner. But I did say to him, I says, how much of the film was true and how much of the book was true? And he said 95%. And I found that fascinating because it's a film which made a big impression on me and a lot of people in the UK. And it still does to this day. Still probably one of the best gangster movies, with the exception, I would say, with the exception probably of Godfather 2 for me. But I really enjoyed Goodfellas. And I guess it's a different way of life. And I'm going to ask you, have you ever heard of any UK gangsters? Is there any UK gangsters you've ever heard of? We have a notorious pair of twins called the Cray twins from London. I mean, have you ever heard of them?
Yeah, of course I saw the movie. I don't know them personally. I don't know of them personally. I don't know any of anyone that my brother may know of them. He might have some ins with people that knew them. I don't know them for certain. I thought the movie was really well done. Great actor that I forgot his name, that actor.
Tom Hardy.
Yeah, Tom Hardy's great. I mean, he played both parts. I think, going back to Goodfellas, I think Goodfellas was a real interesting depiction of what happens in organized crime, or what could happen in organized crime, because there was so much cutthroating, there was so much greed, and you saw the greed, you saw the cutthroats. You didn't see really any honor, and I think, at the end of the day, I think all those things, the honor, it's all bullshit. I think the greed, the power, the money, those are the things that take over, and unfortunately, I think Goodfellas is the ugly side of the mafia, and I think it's the more realistic side. I think The Godfather was a great movie, but I think it was more. I mean, you had your kill. I mean, obviously, there was a lot of killing in The Godfather. Then you had Al Pacino. Obviously, he killed his brother in the movie, but it didn't show the grit that Goodfellas. You saw after they did that Lufthansa heist, how they were killing everybody, and that was a fact. That was true, and they were killing them for two reasons. I think it was mostly greed, and it was also obviously they were afraid if whoever knew was going to talk. But they could kill you just like this. And who kills you is your friend set you up. So, I was never that hard. I was never that, and I'm not going to pretend I was. I would never be a guy that was going to set up a friend, set up, it was not who I was as a person.
No.
And not who I wanted to be honest with you.
No, definitely. I mean, it's real life. It's based on real life, and that was amazing to hear. I mean, looking at The Godfather, there was a scene in it where he attacks his brother, isn't it, with a belt buckle, and again, it casts back to the podcast that I heard you talking on. I think it was you and your brother about.
Right.
Did your brother attack you with a belt at one point? I mean, he wasn't playing, was he?
He was telling me that I did it with him. I did it to him. But
you did it to him, yeah. I mean, what was? I mean, that's something which, again, it's depicted in the film. But I mean, I was disciplined by my dad in a similar kind of way. The belt buckle was something which was a punishment. Back in the day when I was at school in England, you used to get caned, or you would get a strap over your hand. Nowadays, right, if you do that, you end up in the police station.
Yeah, right. Imagine that. No, we were having a fight, and I don't remember exactly what happened. It was not that big of a deal, but the way I did it was, it seemed like it was just coincidentally looked like the scene from The Godfather. It would look like the scene where Michael shoots the guy and just drops it, the way he drops the gun. Yeah. Remember when he shoots Sollozzo and the cop in the restaurant?
Yeah, and he just drops it like that, doesn't he?
He just drops it like the gun. Well, I did that with the belt. Now, and the funny thing is, I didn't do it for that, but the way it replayed back after, we both laughed. The way I dropped the belt after I walked away. But it was just funny. It was.
Well, that's brothers for you. As I say, I've got a younger brother, and we had some fights in our time as well. So I can certainly relate to that. We spoke about John Gotti Sr. tell us a little bit about John Gotti Jr. Then, what was he like? And I believe was your brother John his best man at his wedding?
Yeah, John Gotti and my brother were best friends for a while. They became very tight. John Gotti had his good parts, like everybody else. John Gotti. Now, which one are you talking about, senior or junior?
Junior this time, yeah.
Okay,
They were
junior.
boyhood
Yeah,
friends, yeah.
They weren't. They started out being friends very late, in their late teens. So it wasn't like they grew up together at 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. It wasn't like that. I think that what happened was it was a marriage made because Johnny Alite was becoming very well known and very popular in Queens and Woodhaven in particular, where we were from. And he was getting a very big street rep. And John Gotti, being the son of John Gotti Sr., John Gotti Jr. being the son, he already had his reputation through his dad. So now it's like a power couple. And of course they met together through a mutual friend. The mutual friend was the guy that I was running the park with, Johnny Gebbett. Johnny Gebbett was friends with John Gotti first. He introduced John Gotti to my brother. And so, everything is interconnected, really. John Gotti Jr. was a guy that liked to be the boss. There was a lot of resentment from a lot of guys because he was working with a lot of his father's power, and a lot of people didn't think he deserved to have that. He didn't have the street credentials himself. But I also feel that John Gotti Jr. had a good, really good side to him that I don't think he would fuck you or kill you. I think he would fight for your life a little bit more than some of the other gangsters. So I think John Gotti Jr. had some good qualities. I'm fighting with him right now, and he's doing a lot of things that I don't like. But that said, I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say what I think is right and what I think is wrong. Back in the day, I think he took some advantage of some people because of who his father was, and I think a lot of people resented him because of that. They didn't feel like he made his own bones. I'll leave that up to everyone else to decide for their own opinion whether he did or didn't. But he also had another side to him, I think, that was more caring. But you had to know how to relate to him. But I don't think John was the type of guy that was going to go out and kill you for no reason, John Jr. I think, in other words, I think he was a little bit more, and I think that about his father too. I don't think his father was, that cold-blooded murderer either. You got other guys in the mob that were like that. A lot of guys that were just cold-blooded. I don't think John Gotti Sr. was like that either. I don't think he was a cold-blooded murderer. I don't think he was out of control killing people. Junior, to my knowledge, wasn't. I know he did certain things, obviously, I was aware of, but he had some good points, too. He was a lot of bark. Junior was a lot of bark, not so, he wouldn't bite so much. Senior, I mean, he would bite, but I think if you did the right thing, these guys weren't going to kill you, the Gottis. This is just my opinion.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I mean, as I say, I watched a lot about Gotti. There was lots of English documentaries about John Gotti. Did it surprise you how much he courted the media? Because this thing of ours, La Cosa Nostra, call it what you want, really has always been shrouded in mystery. But he was the Teflon Don. He had the best suits. He had a lawyer that never lost a case. He always walked from cases. Did it surprise you that he was constantly caught in the media?
No. He was flamboyant. So you could go back to Chicago, right? And you could go back to, I mean, he was the same way in Chicago. I mean, he was exactly the same way. What the hell is his name from Chicago?
Al Capone.
Al Capone. Same personality. And you have a lot of personalities that are like that. They're like, listen, I'm in the mob. I'm a boss. I want to enjoy it. I want to. So John was flamboyant, John Gotti. I wasn't surprised. I was surprised that the media, once the media picked him up, that was it. And you got to remember something. A lot of things John did was because he didn't want to look scared. You know, he laughed. This was his way of just being charming and not, you know. In retrospect, did he bring down the mob? I mean, yeah, I think he did in retrospect. But I don't think that, you know, I think the media put him there, and I think that the FBI got jealous, and I think that you try to want to keep a low profile because if you're in people's faces, they're going to get jealous, they're going to get pissed, they're going to feel like, hey, this guy's fucking us with the public, the FBI is saying this, we got to get this motherfucker. You know, he's making us look bad. So it's a little John, it's a little arrogance, I guess, and it's a little bit of the media. And yeah, he loved the spotlight. He loved the spotlight.
No, there's no doubt about it, and I think that's probably what made it so interesting watching from England as a young man, as I did. I guess if he was the man who essentially, if John Gotti was the man who took took the Mafia down and put them on the front pages, I guess it was Sammy the Bull who took John Gotti down. What did you make of what he had to do?
So, you know, I don't really think that Sammy should have done what he did. At the same time, I can understand why he did it. He's facing, life 1,000 times over. He's gone for the rest of his, days. He's not coming back. John and him had their issues like anybody else. I mean, look, when you do something, whether it's killing somebody or whether it's, ratting on somebody, you justify the reasons why you do it. Right? Everything is a justification in the mob. I killed him because he did this. I killed him because I thought he was going to rat, but there may be no justification for it. It's just that you were greedy or you were afraid you were going to go to jail for the rest of your life. So everyone justifies things in the mob. That's one of the big things. Everyone justifies why they do things. Look, at the end of the day, Sammy should have taken John Gotti out by himself. If he felt that John was gonna fuck him over the way he did, and John did fuck him over. Was telling him, take the pinch from me and take the, you take the pinch. And Sammy should have then at that point manned up and said, you know what, fuck you. I came into this like a man, into this business, and I'm going to go out like a man. So that means you go out and you fucking deal with John the way you have to deal with John, and that's it. In other words, you guys have it out. Whatever you got to do, you got to kill him. He's got to kill you. Whatever, either that or you just walk away and you just take your punishment. So Sammy was an innocent. And so for Sammy to go and turn state's evidence against John, to me, that was not the right thing to do. Again, I'm not telling you that John shouldn't have gone to jail, should have gone to jail. I'm not, but just from Sammy's perspective, Sammy's idea should have been, if I got a beef with John Gotti and John Gotti's got a beef with me, I'm going to fucking deal with it the way I used to deal with it, the way it's supposed to deal with it. Not running behind everyone's back to the FBI. Now, that all said, I can understand someone trying to save their own ass. I can understand them. It doesn't mean I agree with it or disagree with it. It depends on your relationship with the person. But I would have. There are certain people you just don't rat out. There are certain people that are close to you and the boss to a thing, you just don't do it. And, but it wasn't me. It didn't happen to me. So it happened to John Gotti. And things played out the way, I guess, in the big picture, the way they were supposed to play out.
Yeah,
But
I mean, it's it's very similar in a lot of ways, as you say. I mean, you know, Sammy the Bull faced, you know, multiple life sentences in jail. He would never have got out, and he made that decision. And very similar to Henry Hill, when him and I were sitting discussing it. God, I had a bit extra weight on me back in those days when I was doing security. But when Henry he said exactly the same thing. He said, my family was at risk. I was at risk. I had two choices. I either died, and there was a possibility my family and my daughter could have died, or I save everybody by becoming a rat. And you know, that was a decision he made. And I mean, he was somebody who couldn't even live on witness protection because he started dealing drugs on witness protection, Henry. But he was a hell of a character, and likewise, Sammy the Bull's made his decision, made his choice, and he has to live with that. So, but I agree, it's fascinating. It is fascinating. Look, we've got 10 minutes left. Turning your life around is always something I'm interested in. I've interviewed many British criminals, and you're the first American criminal that former criminal I've managed to interview. So, you know, from my perspective, turning your life around, how did you do that, and was it difficult?
Difficult, yeah. It's always difficult because you got to reinvent yourself. For me, I became a stockbroker. I became a stockbroker with the infamous boiler room, which you might have seen, the Wolf of Wall Street or boiler room.
Yeah.
I was a vice president over there. So
fantastic.
So my life has been very grandiose. But you know, I didn't know when I went into it. I knew it when I went to it. I knew I was going to be a stockbroker. I didn't know that we'd be doing what we were doing, to be honest with you. But you know, you turn your life around, you look at your life and you look at other people in the life and you say, where am I going? Where the fuck am I going with this? Where's it taking me? Is this where I want to be? Is this who I want to be like? You know, people killing each other, people killing their best friends, people going for what? For what? What is it offering me? And then I saw a lot of people too that weren't making that much money that were soldiers. And I was like, this is nothing. I can make more money on my own. I fight myself. I don't need anyone to fight for me. I don't need the power or anything like that. And you know, I was a big playboy. I got girls at will, you know, models and actresses. So what did I need them for? And then at the other end of the spectrum, I believed in God, and I believed in a higher power, and I believed that, you know, in being loving and nice to people. So for me, it was a no-brainer. The scary part was reinventing myself and finding a real position where I can take care of myself and make money. Luckily for me, I just had enough intelligence and a good enough mouthpiece that I can go and be a top stockbroker, and then eventually lose my license and start my own recruiting agency in New York City, headhunting agency. So, and I found God along the way, and I'm very spiritual. I've had a million miracles, which we don't have time to go into, but miracles that you cannot believe. These are real miracles, and not like, oh, you can make this a miracle. These were things that were incredible, Steve. So I'm very spiritual. I try to help people out with that. In fact, I'm doing a show, which maybe we'll discuss the next couple seconds, couple minutes.
Doing a show. I mean, tell us a little bit about that.
So I just started it. It's a radio show called Up to Me Radio. It's Jimmy Alite, Inside and Out, and basically it goes into spiritual, emotional, and physical well-being. And you know, I like to concentrate mostly on the spiritual and the emotional parts of that, and how that affects, you know, everything else you do. If you could see a big picture, Steve, then the little picture seems a lot easier, and you can handle things in life that come your way. But if you're seeing things from the same level, same point of view as your problems, it's really hard to get out of your own way. So what I found that is, if when you start having miracles and seeing things from a much higher perspective, then life over here becomes very easy, very manageable, because you're able to see the bigger picture of what really is happening in life. So in this show, I'm trying to bring on guests and bring that to the table and show people that life is got a lot more substance and a lot more underneath it than you're able to see with your vision. And quantum mechanics and quantum physics and spirituality kind of meet. So science and spirit meet, and they show you this picture. And this is what I want to kind of show people, how spirituality and science really are not opposed to each other. They come together really nicely. So in my show, I'm going to try to show different guests that are able to kind of talk about those things that come together and how they mesh and how they're not polar opposites. And I want to give confidence and faith to people in life that they can, for here and the hereafter, that there's nothing to worry about, and to be happy and to be brave and to understand that everything happens for a reason. And this I believe 100%. And but for certain things happening, Steve, then you wouldn't open your eyes to bigger ideas like God. If you don't have any pain, or if you don't go through any rough stuff, you never open your eyes to other possibilities. You just kind of cruise along. So I think that people that have had very interesting or very dangerous lives or very rough lives are more open, at least, believe it or not, to seeing that there's other possibilities, because they're looking. How can I make my life better? Where do I go to make my life? And ultimately, the only place you could find is God, is the ultimate reality, as far as I see. So that's where I'm at.
That's good. So where can people find this this program? Is there a link?
I can get a link sent to you. They can go right up right on their website to Up to Me Radio. It's up to the number 2 Up to Me Radio, and then on the links they'll see the different podcasts, different radio show hosts, and I'll be under there, Jimmy Alite. So if they just put it into their web browser, go there, they can see that. They can go under the site, they'll see me, and they can just go to my webcast, and they'll be able to go to and there's different ways to see it. You can go different.
We'll stick a link down below for you to have a look at that. Please go and visit James's page. It's It'll be fascinating to watch that. And last question, I guess, for you is, if you had to speak to yourself as a youngster, what advice would you give to yourself, knowing what you've been through?
Yeah. So I think everything has an equal and every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So it says the second law of physics. So I would say, find out what your abilities are, find out what makes you happy, and that's also a win-win for other people. And then exploit those things in a good way. So if you're good with numbers, become an accountant. If you're good with, everyone's good at something, and do something that's going to help other people and you at the same time, because ultimately everything you do comes back to you. If people can understand that there's a reaction, like a boomerang, throw a boomerang, that's going to come right back to you. So I think I would do everything the right way this time. I would still enjoy myself, but I would make sure that I'm doing the things the right way, as opposed to trying to do shortcuts. Shortcuts don't work in the long run. So yeah, I'd look for my abilities. I'd look for what's good, what I'm good at, and I would try to make it a win-win for life with people and myself.
Great stuff, great advice, and absolutely great to have you on the show, mate. Good luck with everything you're doing, and look forward to speaking to you again soon. Take care.
Thank you so much, Steve. Great to talk to you. Good luck with everything.
Thanks, mate.
Bye-bye.